not sure how the lava cake works into all this.
I don't know. Well, if she's thinking of... Okay, we can talk about it later in the podcast. If you want.
Oh, sure. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hi. Oh, are we on?
We're on.
Obviously, we're professionals.
Yep. Professional movie people. And we always have to, because we're professionals, we're going to introduce ourselves because
that's right.
We always forget to do that. My name is Eli. I am not a film critic of any kind, just a film consumer.
Mm-hmm. And I am Denise. I am also not in any kind of way a professional. I was a chef for a while, taking a break from that, so we can use that as my quote-unquote expertise, I guess, for this show.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah, we've been talking about getting back into exercising and doing the things that we need to do.
We're always talking about it.
I mean, we have, and we've done it. We're just we're a little behind in our older age.
It's more of a casual pursuit at this point.
I guess it's fair. Well, I guess that sort of brings us around to the movie we just watched, Love Lies Bleeding by A24. Man, what a movie.
Yeah.
That was something. I had actually really been looking forward to watching this movie for some time, and it's funny because for as much as saying I've really been looking forward to it, we missed it in theaters at the start of the year.
It was a really limited release,
wasn't it? It had a very limited release, and I had a lot of stuff going on, so I wasn't able to catch it when it was circulating in theaters. And
we didn't hear a whole lot about it, other than it was good. And we saw a trailer that looked really interesting, and that was kind of about it, I think.
It was one of those trailers at the start of the year that was like, oh man, that looks really interesting, and I'm
and
into
it's
it.
like A24 has been kind of hitting it out of the park for a little bit now, so we're always a little curious about what they're putting out.
Well, it had a really cool looking vibe to it, and
yes.
Much like some of the other movies that we were interested in this year, like I didn't really want to read too much into it or find out too much about it. Like I kind of wanted to go in a little cold, a little blind, and I'm kind of glad that was the case.
Yeah.
Like clearly it was going to be a muscle movie. I mean, that's the initial trailer definitely set the tone for that. So there was no doubt about it that this was going to be a muscle movie. But I think just for like a second before we really get into the movie, like it's really interesting what A24 is doing, because everything that I think that you and I have occasionally talked about on drives home when we're like, man, it's really awesome that they're giving people opportunities for some of these movies, because as much as, and I mean, we shouldn't act like we're film snobs and we watch Marvel movies every now and then, but to be honest, like we've
enjoyed them. We've
had a good time.
Yeah.
But we're also
95% of the time it's been super fun.
But I think and let's tie in the health kick, like at a certain point, you realize like, man, I've really enjoyed eating lots of potato chips and lots of this and that. And it really is starting to, like, it doesn't taste as good as it used to because it is getting stale and stagnant.
You've had so much of it.
Right.
And now your body is like screaming for some green juice
or something
to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I'm really happy that A24 this year has probably put out a handful of our more favorite probably movies,
it's been
because
really strong showing for them past year or so,
because they're really wanting to I don't know, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Just watching the intro of this movie, like the logo treatments, like you can tell they allowed the artist to go like, you know what, take it, but it's because I think it fits in the A24 look and aesthetic, and there's something very strange and I would almost say foreign about this movie in that a lot of the subject matter, a lot of the way it's treated, some of the art direction choices of like some of the things they did with the film, which we can talk about a little bit later, but it's like, and again, I hope I'm making an assumption here, but I would like to hope to think that my assumption is correct, but it's almost like they've given control to the content creators because I mean that's why they pay for them to do their jobs, right? And they hire logo people to do logo treatments and say like, hey, A24 has a certain aesthetic, so if you can stick with that, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I love the intro.
Like the posters have been
the trailer, the poster.
It's not the cookie cutter like, oh, here's the actor that's going to be in it. It's been some really interesting, really kind of refreshing, honestly, like art choices that they've done, not just with the film itself, but in the marketing. So yeah, it's been super exciting to watch stuff come out of A24. Honestly, whether they hit it out of the park or not, I just love that they're taking chances on stuff like this. And because we've had so many discussions already about how, and I think a lot of people will tend to agree. We certainly have seen a lot of the little video essays about it. We've heard enough people say that it seems like it's big budget or nothing.
Right.
And the fact that A24 exists and is so successful with handpicking art house movies, and this probably had a pretty juicy little budget, probably not a crazy amount, but you can tell there was some good production value to it. It still looked really good, but it didn't look like a mega bajillion budget dollar film like. And I really appreciate that they're still trying to straddle that line of like the mid-range films instead of like, what's going to appeal to the most people possible, because I feel like we've had so much of that, and I get it. Like, at the end of the day, it's how much money something makes. But I really appreciate that A24 and like Neon exists for this exact reason, that films like this can still get made by people that are passionate about projects like this, that aren't necessarily trying to squeeze themselves into like the big budget movies, which are still fun. And like I said, I mean, we still watch a lot of big budget fun movies.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just...
No, it's just nice to have that middle tier stuff.
Right.
Because it felt for a minute there that there was a drought. And it was kind of, I don't know, scary is a strong word, but it did kind of look bleak there for a little bit. That is it just going to be Marvel movies forever?
the real sugary cereal forever.
Right.
And I just can't
which is delicious, but you gotta
balance. You
gotta watch your,
Well, what's interesting, if they had the statistics here, but I'm sure that they probably don't. So this movie made $12 million or over $12 million gross worldwide, which I'm sure is not probably a ton of money for a movie like this. And I would imagine, it's not listed here, but I would probably imagine that the budget for this movie was probably about $12 to $20 million. But I feel like in this current age of like cinema adjustment that we're kind of going through, I feel like it probably has a second life in streaming.
Oh, absolutely.
Much like like the video store era would give something a second life, or a longer life. If it had like a video life, like The Thing is a really good example of that, right? Like
Office Space was another. Was it Office Space? Idiocracy. Those movies,
like movies that were like. They considered flops in the box office and then massive like video store hits.
Yeah, the kind of movies that kind of marketing ignored, or like they drew the kind of the short end of the stick with the interest at the time, and then all of a sudden become like kind of cult hits.
Yep.
I do. We feel a certain way about streaming sometimes, and that maybe whatever, that's another podcast episode probably. But we take advantage of streaming. We watch from streaming all the time. But the fact that it can probably help extend the life of movies like this in the zeitgeist is super encouraging to think about.
Yep. Well, then let's kind of dive into the movie then, because we didn't talk about it, so I'm curious about your thoughts. And so, like we said, the movie sort of starts with a very, I think that it's interesting. The movie starts with a very like bleak sort of tone, and it sets the tone like right from the get-go, which I love. But like the almost like sepia tone over the entire movie, like it starts in a nasty gym, and then we the opening, the literal almost opening scene after you see some people like exercising in this nasty ass gym.
Is gross.
Is Kirsten Stewart? Is it Kirsten or is it Kristen? Kristen.
Yep.
So Kristen Stewart. The movie opens with her like fucking like just like elbow deep in a toilet. Just unclogging it, and it is just nasty, gross. But I think you get a sense of like
yeah, you totally get how unglamorous this movie is gonna be.
It's about to be. Yep.
It's gonna get real dirty and nasty.
It's sweaty. It's gross. You could almost smell that bathroom.
Yeah,
it was gross.
Honestly, kind of the whole movie honestly had like this sheen to it. Like all of the places all the settings that they had a certain look of like, oh, that's like the nicotine stains on the wallpaper. Yeah. All the gross kind of.
It has it's funny because I know we've already done a couple movies now or we've talked, whether we've recorded about these movies or we've talked about them from other movies we've seen, but like trying to capture, oh man, this just make me feel old, what I'm about to say. But trying to capture that early 90s aesthetic of the transition between the 80s and the 90s, because Stranger Things has always been a very like popular thing. And so like when you do your set dressing and your art direction for that, like they kind of get it, but then they kind of don't.
Yeah.
And man, this
I
movie,
always say it's the hair that gives it away.
Well, I think it's the hair, and I think it is like if you really go into the details of like a home or an apartment or a car or just how that feels like. I think that those little details for me really hit home because, you know, we spent a lot of time traveling.
I mean, you lived it, right?
I lived it. Yeah. I mean, so, I was exactly.
I said you, I mean me also.
Yes. Well, but from the US side, right? Of just right. How ingrained that was into my brain. 'Cause I was at probably the most brain developing portion of my life as a very young teen and this movie takes place in 1989, so that would have put me like very close to, I would have been like 13 or 14, so I would have been close to when I started working. So I remember just a lot of these things, going to friends' houses and stuff, and I feel like this movie just like fucking nailed that. I mean, like the opening scene, like after Kristen Stewart leaves her job and goes home, and like there's like the wood paneling and lots of wood and just like
carpet everywhere.
Yeah, carpet, drab lighting, like
weird wallpaper.
Yeah, like there's a certain aesthetic.
The ugly lighting. Yes. Yeah.
Very ugly lighting, which is why I am very particular about the lighting in our house.
Super annoying about it.
Yes, but because there's like a certain amount of depression that comes out of the lighting
I totally
choices of the 80s, but this movie just like nails it, and it's so great to see that. So we see Kristen Stewart. She's working in a gym, in a very like pathetic, just like dreary,
kind of rundown kind of town.
Yeah. Yeah, they never really exactly say where they are. Just from looking at it, I just kind of assumed it was like New Mexico or something.
Some Southwest. I could even see it like maybe the western side of Texas.
Yeah, I could see West
or
Texas,
Oklahoma,
maybe like Northwest, where it's more mountainy.
Yeah,
and not so much just flat in straight up West Texas, but yeah, somewhere along those lines. Just
real arid, real dry, real I don't know.
There's a certain emptiness about it, but also like, you know, you can see the nice little mountain ridges
you can
and
see
vistas.
you can see the mountain ridges in the distance. There's like a canyon kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. So you see a lot of that. And so Lou, who is Kristen Stewart, who's the main I guess say actor of the movie. You get a real sense of like her life. Things don't
immediately.
Things don't seem great. It's sort of one of those living in a town, just kind of getting by. And then we're shortly thereafter like introduced to the other main character, which I guess is Jackie. Mm-hmm. Jackie is
played by Katie O'Brien.
Yeah,
who is in a lot of stuff we keep seeing turn up. She was in
she was in the Mandalorian, which is I think where we first saw her. We just saw her not too long ago in the movie Twisters.
She was it was a small bit part, but
still there's enough there. She's been in enough small parts that it's kind of her face and her there's just something about
like how she carries herself really more than anything.
Her character as a person is very it almost pierces through. And so this is probably without doubt, this is her biggest role to date in this movie. And so she is Jackie in the movie. We see her shortly thereafter in a very awkward sort of opening sequence for her, where she is in a car.
Well, don't give too much away.
Well, yeah. I guess. Well,
you get the sense that she's kind of drifting. She's very much uprooted from where she was from. She just got into this town, and that's But you find out later she's training to get into a bodybuilding contest, which is how she ends up meeting Lou. Because Lou manages the gym that she ends up training in after a while.
Well, it's interesting, right? It's like this very quick sort of when people would leave to go to Hollywood to make it there, but instead it's whatever the next big city is, which is this, wherever it is that we are. And her dreams are just to be the champion bodybuilder, which
she's trying to make her way to Las Vegas to get to this championship kind of deal that I guess she's never done before. She just decided at some point that she was going to train and try out for it and do that. That was her whole deal.
Her thing.
And she hadn't, she was that was the end goal, everything she was kind of working towards. And that's why she finds herself in this town, because it's on the way to Vegas.
Yeah. And you definitely get they definitely show that she is a drifter. She's without a home. She's just kind of making things work. And so, she is looking for work. She gets working at a gun range.
With some kind of
restaurant?
Food court or something?
Or bar? Or
yeah, is that a thing? I don't know. I've never.
That's I
think I've only been to a gun range once, and it was pretty straightforward.
I've been to a gun range, but I've never been to a gun range where...
That's a bar?
Yeah, where there's a bar and food and...
she works as a waitress at a gun range?
At a gun range bar. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that just seems... very
the worst kind of combination.
I don't know, seems very I guess I can only say Texas, but this movie, so maybe this does supposed to be West Texas, I don't know. And it seems pretty early on their paths cross because she gets a job with through Dave Franco's character JJ and Ed Harris's character, who's Lou Senior. They don't really mention his name much, but we don't know at this point that it turns out that the characters
how they're all
how they're all intertwined, I guess you could say. But so she gets a job. Ed Harris, as he's getting older, is just...
Look, man, he's great. He's never not been great in anything I've seen him in.
It seems like he's getting better as he's getting
honestly,
older. Because, man, he was creepy as fuck in this movie.
It's funny because I told you that when there's a certain scene where the lighting is so stark against him. I was like, oh, he's kind of rocking a very Crypt Keeper look right now.
Yeah.
Because he really was. He's a very menacing presence, which I think he's great at in those kinds of roles. I mean, it was not a very dissimilar role from where we saw him last, which was Westworld, right? It's the last thing we saw him in.
Yep.
Just menacing, just hard, kind of. You don't really know what's going to set him off, but you know it's going to be something.
Yep.
But yeah, he's great in this. I never not love him.
Yeah, he's 73.
I honestly thought he would be older.
I thought he was a little bit older too, to be honest. But I think that he really plays up that part. But man, he is creepy. So Jackie gets a job through JJ
and
Lou Senior. and she is working now at the gun club, or the gun, I don't know, whatever you call it, the armory where they're shooting guns and drinking.
Lots of guns, yeah.
And I guess she also gets a membership to the gym now, where Lou is working, and almost immediately, like, Lou is entranced by Jackie, and
you get the sense that it's like almost like love at first sight.
Yeah, and I think that there's no like. It's interesting because in movies like this, like this goes back to what we were seeing at the very beginning of, like, from an A24 movie. Like, I don't know if it's just they're leaning into, like, look, we all know that Kristen Stewart, like, she's gay. She's gay, like, publicly, you know, in life, pop culture and zeitgeist. Yeah. So it's almost like that they spend no time trying to establish that,
or trying to convince you or tell you,
or like, she is gay. Like, it's
just like a fact in the movie.
And I kind of appreciated that we spent zero energy trying to actually explain that,
like, her existence.
Exactly.
Which it's kind of funny, but I just love this kind of storytelling where it's a story, and of course the kind of characters and how they are as people matter. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like, look, this is the story, right, and we're gonna tell this, and obviously it matters that her character is a certain way, or she lives her life a certain way, but this is the story within that world, and we're not gonna try to spoon feed you anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The important part here is the story we're about to tell,
and we're just gonna move along.
Right.
Like,
it's not about
a clip.
Yeah. We're not gonna go into the detail of the particulars, because if it's a good story, it's a good story, and you can replace the characters. Kind of goes back to the whole Shaun of the Dead, when they wrote that, and it was supposed to be written for basically a male and female part.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so when they replaced Ed's character,
as a best friend,
as a best friend, they literally did not change the dialogue of that would have been a female saying that.
Oh,
because
that's
it's a budding friendship.
Yeah.
And like, when you say that, and if you think about it, if you think about some of the scenes and the way that they sort of like play off of each other, you could easily be like, oh, if a female said that would have been a little different. It was really more like some of those little sequences where like Sean will do something, and then like Ed is kind of behind him, and he's like, I got you, babe, or, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of jokingly, but I can kind of see it.
If you think about it, and that was a female, it'd be like, oh, I got your back, babe. You know, sort of like as a partner. And so anyway, all that to sort of say, good story equals just good writing, and I feel like with this,
that's not to say though that the queer angle in this movie didn't matter, because it definitely adds a lot to just the story itself.
I don't want to dismiss that also, like not saying that it's a necessary, or it's necessary to like just overplay it, but I guess what I'm saying is I appreciate A24, or just like directors and them giving them the clout to say, like, you know what, just give us the story.
Just give us the story however you want to tell it.
And we'll like diegetically, if we need to. And there's actually a scene later on that sort of reinforces that in terms of like, in terms of, like, you know, oh, she's a dyke, you know, whatever. And that kind of comes up a little bit later in the movie. And it's sort of like, that was there, I guess, to sort of reinforce some of that from a storytelling standpoint. But I don't know. I appreciate that it just kind of flowed into the movie. Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, let's make a big deal about it.
Yeah, it wasn't a big point that they had to make. Yeah. It just was, these are the people, these kinds of people exist, and they have their own stories to tell, and we should tell it. Which I love that, because there's so many kinds of, you know, it's funny because I think this would have been a different movie entirely if it was like a male main character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
Entirely different.
Yeah,
I feel like.
And I again, I want to give a lot of credit to A24 of like, if this was a foreign film, they would have been like, you know what, let's just make let's make the two lovers, or the love story here, or the the people that care for each other, let's make them two females. You know what I mean? And then like, that would be like a French film. And they're like, oh, it's it's so like, so powerful because,
artistic.
Because they're going against the grain. And I feel like in this movie, like A24 is like, you know what? Why, that's not a foreign, like that should
it
not
shouldn't be like a foreign concept.
Exactly.
Like, who cares? That's how it is now.
Let's just let's
do it.
I love your story. Let's just present your story. This is a great angle.
Yeah.
And let's do it and represent and I think it would be great.
The story was great as is. So I definitely appreciate like obviously we don't know what happened behind the scenes, but the fact that it did get made like this, I feel like speaks a lot to the fact that, you know what, we're just gonna let the creators of the script and the director just do what they need to do to tell the story.
Right. Exactly.
Because I definitely think Kristen Stewart brings so much to this movie that it's hard for me to imagine a different actor, much less a different gender actor.
Yeah.
To the character.
I think it changes the dynamic of this movie a lot.
Incredibly. Yeah.
So they meet up in the they cross paths in the gym. Stuart is now, or Lou is now, like just fascinated with Jackie, and it's funny because she gets a very she basically engages with her by being very protective of her, because I guess she just sort of knows, like, I guess in a similar way that like maybe somebody would go after another person, whether it be male or female. It's like, that's my target. I'm going to go in and engage, and she goes right in, and it's super. Yeah, it's super fast. It's super quick, but you'd never for once not believe that they have a connection. Yeah, which is the other aspect to this movie. You can totally. They were both so great in these roles that I believed the whole time that they were crazy, kind of literally, for each other. Yep.
So yeah, so once they meet, they kind of get, I don't know, tangled up in a bunch of kind of domestic and criminal endeavors that they kind of stumble into more than anything else, maybe. Yeah. But kind of wrapped into the fact also that Jackie ends up kind of, I don't know how to say it, like she has a very troubled background. She has a very troubled past. And she's kind of repeating some patterns, I guess, that she should not be engaging in.
Yeah.
So they get kind of caught up in, like, it becomes like a domino effect to where they, I don't know, it's hard to say anything about this movie without giving it all up, because there's so much that ties into each other.
It's funny because of the sort of the there is like a romantic element obviously to it, but it is very much like that, just companionship, like looking for those sorts of things.
The connection.
And I mean, and like Lou is very much like you were saying, or like there's clearly a troubled past here, and whether it be drugs or whatever, like addictions of some kind or something, like a lot of that just sort of rears its head up, and so like it very much becomes a story of, like it's how would you what is that when they say like when fools rush in, sort of scenario.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's almost like a twisted take a little bit on like unconditional love, because they go through some really fucked up shit, but they, at the end of the day, they know they're supposed to be together. And you look at it from the outside and it's like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah, but at the same time,
it's like, of course you guys should be together. Right.
Yeah, because
it's almost like not, I don't know. It's funny because as much shit as they go through and as much shit as crazy shit as they do, it's almost like it's not toxic exactly.
No, not at all. And it's not, it's the any violence or any like harm almost feels unintentional. Yeah. Because it's done out of a love, right? But it's a messy,
but it got twisted into something.
It's a very messy, and that's what I kind of like about this movie as well too, is like movies don't always have to like this movie straddles a very fine line of like a movie where you're like, oh, well, how would they ever know to do this or do that? And then you can just bitch and complain about like all this and this and that. This movie, like in its pacing and everything about it, like it's like Bad Decisions, the movie, because you make bad decisions, but at the same time, like you kind of understand.
You understand what they're doing.
Because maybe we've all sort of been in similar, maybe not exactly.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not these situations. But like,
but
whether
you think about it, right?
Whether
like,
it's,
what would I do if I get stuck in something like this? And it's like, well,
I can't leave this or I can't do that.
I would do it this way.
What about this?
But you never know, right? You never know in the heat of the moment what you're going to end up doing. I know for a fact that I'm a kind of person that would like freeze when I'm scared or shocked or something.
Sure.
So, like I'd like to say, oh yeah, I would totally kick ass. I would totally know everything I need to do because I watch a bunch of true crime documentaries and I know how to cover my tracks and blah. There's no way I would immediately like crumple into the corner. But just kind of watching these characters kind of try to figure out how to get through the fucked up shit that they're going through is actually like such an interesting exercise, and like it straddles the line of like, you guys are so fucking stupid, but also like I totally get what you're doing.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I think I would say that this isn't like by any means in any way a spoiler, but as the movie continues and like Jackie is still trying to make this competition, like steroids gets involved and steroids end up playing a big player in this because of roid rage, basically. And that was like a really interesting take on that
problem.
Yeah, on the problem of roid rage.
Because that was like a real heavy thing. I mean, I don't know that world at all, but I've
80s,
heard like
80s,
in the 80s, right,
yes,
that was a
much.
real problem.
Yeah, I mean, not to say like I knew what the world of bodybuilding and all that shit was, but when it came to like sports and athletics and wrestling and all those things, oh man, like just you absolutely, well, no, even as a matter of fact, because I remember even in baseball, there was like a big deal about
that's
that.
Right.
There was the big steroids controversy because like dudes were hitting home runs like just like it was like nothing.
Breaking bats.
Yeah. And I remember because I was living here in Dallas when a lot of that happened. And that I feel like that was kind of the end of the steroid era, which was like the mid to late 90s. So I feel like it surged in the mid 80s and into the 90s. But because
I know when we've listened to other like the ultimate bodybuilder of that era, which was Arnold. Like I mean, he's admitted to doing that stuff. So I don't think it was uncommon at all.
Yeah, and a lot of wrestlers from the 80s were like, you have to because you're a performer, and
like, how do you keep up?
Right. Yeah. They were making the money that they were because of that, of the way they looked. And
sure.
They were a brand. But so this movie had a very interesting take on that roid rage from an art direction, aesthetic kind of look, and I thought it was creepy, but at the same time, like
great.
It borderline like almost being silly, but in a movie that's just so weird, like this one, it fit actually like really well. And there are 3 scenes where it's very pronounced where Jackie is roided out, and it's just like, wow, that's a really brave decision from an art direction standpoint. Yeah. But I mean, tied in with audio and visual and everything, like I thought.
And she's like stunning in this movie. It is.
Everybody in this movie is
as we were eating our wings, just watching her flex and strut around, I was like, oh shit, I really should go to the gym. This is, I feel bad now, but I'm going to keep eating my chocolate lava cake.
Well, and it's again, interesting going back to like, if one of the 2 characters, whether it was Lou's character or Jackie's character was a male character, I don't know, like it changes a lot in the dynamic of like, I think, you can I mean, I don't think I don't want to say it's debatable. It's clearly debatable, but it's something that you could mention, which is like the female body is just like aesthetically is always going to be more pleasing. And then when you have a very fit woman who's very muscular, but not like grossly muscular, just like really in shape, like that would be the equivalent of having like a Glenn Powell, who's just a very muscular, like, sort of guy. But I think it changes sort of things, right? Because like it's the, what do they call it? The male gaze, right? Of what you're looking at. But in this case, like two strong, like female characters, there's no reason why it has to be a male character.
Right.
But at no time, at no point did I was I like, oh man, she looks like a man. Like, da 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 da. It's like, she was very feminine.
She looked incredible.
She looked great. Like it was really cool. And like I said, refreshing to sort of have that perspective of like,
I mean, yeah, just that visual of like a physically powerful woman on screen like that, and not being like denigrated as a character. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's some, like a couple people, like extras or whatever in the film that kind of like, oh, she's a freak or she's a big girl, whatever. But it's like, they're obviously dumb and wrong.
Right.
Because you as a viewer, you're watching it, it's like, holy shit, that's incredible.
Yeah.
She's like so powerful. She's gorgeous. And then just kind of like match that up with a character, or like really a person like Kristen Stewart. I mean, yeah, just so, I don't know. It was just very...
Well, you brought up a good point there in that, like, again, going back to like the story and the main portion of this, like, there is no through line or anything of like, well, except for Jackie talks about her up when she was young and she was adopted by her parents when she was 13. And she said that she was a fat kid and she was bullied, and she said that would never happen again. Yeah. And so like, that's like sort of her motivation to be the person that she is. But to that point, like throughout the movie, you like you were saying, you don't see people in the background being like, what are you doing, like, freak? Or you're a man, like none of that's brought up. None of the bullying aspect of it, except for there's one scene.
Yep.
Where all that sort of placates itself. Which again, it's not really a spoiler, but like some of the guys that are hitting on her, Jackie, that is, like some of the muscle heads of the gym. Like they want to take her out for a drink or dinner or something like that. And she's like, no, like
she's more interested in talking to Lou.
Right. And she kind of just insinuates that like, I'm swinging this way, and which leads to like a bit of a tussle. And I thought that scene was like really interesting because that's, again, it sets the tone, or it just kind of, that was enough. And we didn't need to come back around to that again, or didn't need to be like reinforced or whatever. Like we just kind of went through it.
Yeah, I like that it was like a part of her life, everyday life that she had to deal with. But it's like, whatever, I'm also doing these other cool, crazy, interesting things.
Yeah. And so the movie just sort of like, the other thing I will say about this movie though is like the tension building is actually really good.
Yeah, so good.
And
I don't. Maybe we should wait till later to say one way or the other how we feel about this movie. Although it sounds like we both enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I loved this movie.
Yeah.
The tension building was. I think it helped a lot. Maybe that we didn't look into it very much, or that we didn't watch the trailer over and over. But I don't know. I'm just a big sucker for like noir or neo-noir type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And this was done so well that I just like everything about, I don't know if I could find anything that I would complain about, because I just enjoyed it all the way through.
Right.
And it was it was a great pace. And also it was a very succinct, like, what is it, hour 45? Mm-hmm. Like it didn't overstay. It's welcome. All the characters kind of hit exactly where they needed to, and I don't know, like the actors were great. Like I think it was very well casted. Jenna Malone is in this, which is great, even though it's kind of a smaller part for her. I love seeing her and everything. Dave Franco is totally believable in this role, to say the least. But yeah, just I feel like it was such a concise little, like, num num num, like a little delicious bite that was just perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's 2024. It came out in 2024.
Yes, it came out early.
This is
year.
Gonna be in my top 5 probably this year.
I'd have to kind of agree. And then, so you looked at the director. Who is the director?
So the director is let me pull it up. Rose Glass. Mm-hmm. And she directed another movie that I haven't seen, but I've always heard good things about, called Saint Maud.
Yeah. I have not seen that either, but I've always heard that we should be watching this, and why haven't we seen it?
Yeah, we just keep kind of missing it, or we forget about it, whatever. But I've heard good things about it. And if this is kind of her trajectory of kind of unhinged, deranged female characters, I'm into it. I love it.
Yep.
I love we support women's rights and wrongs in this house. So,
yes.
I love that these kinds of directors and these kinds of writers are getting gigs like this because, I mean, it's such like this movie in particular, it's so refreshing. I don't know, we're like horror hounds. We watch a lot of horror movies. That's kind of the generally preferred movie in our house for the most part. But watching something like this felt so refreshing because you'd never, like, at least for me, I'd never seen characters like this before. The intrigue of the movie, you could argue is like been done before, which obviously it has, but like the fact that it's like kind of spun on its head with putting characters like this in the middle of it, it just felt so, I don't know, it felt like yum, like I've never tasted anything like this before. Even though like, oh, it's familiar, I can taste certain things in it that I know. But like the combination of flavors.
No, I would very much second that, because I feel I was going to say something similar to you in that like there's nothing particularly new about this movie, but when you execute something like that, you'll eat a tasty burger if you know that it's done with a lot of care and like
seasoned perfectly.
Yeah. And you're thinking about all those things that bring it together, not just for the sake of just getting it done and getting it out there. It's like, the very particulars of this movie, from the way it was shot, from the way it was, the film grading, the soundtrack, like really, like it was subtle, but it was like, it really tied a lot of, like a good bread on a burger, like just the right amount, like not too hard, not too squishy, like
doesn't fall apart.
Like it actually like sort of bookend a lot of the thing, a lot of the aesthetic choices that made it feel very late 90s. And then when they eventually show that they were at the 1989 bodybuilding championships, I was like, okay, yeah, then I 100% nailed it.
And it was so, didn't you find that, at least for me, it was easy to believe that this was made in the 80s?
Yeah.
This is like one of the few movies that I've seen that like does that nostalgia kick of like, oh, we're just gonna set it in the 90s or the 80s for no reason. This is one of the few that I feel like matches that time era pretty perfectly.
Yeah, and it makes me think about movies that there was like a period in the late 90s, and then maybe at some point in the 2000s or the aughts, where you had movies like this that were just kind of, I don't know, like they're not I don't know, they're hard to describe, but they are sort of like this love, like sort of driven, like real life sort of stuff. I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe. But
like what kind of, like,
I don't know. Like I was trying to think, like I wouldn't necessarily say Thelma and Louise, but it has an aspect of movies like that. Movies like True Romance. Movies that
I can see that.
Like, but the difference being this movie in particular felt actually more like authentic, because like the characters felt believable, even though like it's so I guess to sort of summarize the movie for me in that sense is like, it's funny because the reason why I like horror a little bit more from time to time is like movies like this actually give me anxiety, because it's very relatable, right? In that like something happens, it's like, oh, how do I deal with this? You get into a car accident, and not that you like murder anybody in a car accident, but like the motions of like, oh no, now I need to deal with this, and then that means I got to deal with that.
How would you?
I'm gonna miss work, and I'm gonna do this, and like there's always like a falling. There's a waterfall of things that happen because of it, and it causes anxiety. And for me, this movie caused anxiety because of that. Same like there's action consequences, right, that happen very quickly, and now the people that are going to get involved to try to get you out of your consequences are people that you really don't want to be involved with, but you also don't have much of a choice, especially if you're you're living, literally, on shoestrings. And so I like that aspect, but this movie, unlike a True Romance or maybe a Thelma and Louise, like it doesn't feel like
a fantasy,
right? It doesn't feel like these characters from a movie. It actually feels
real.
It feels a lot more real. But when the art direction decides to take choices, because there are some those choices with the roid rage and some of that stuff, like it seems silly, but I think it's a way to remind people like me that probably suffer from that kind of anxiety to be like, hey, it's okay. It's just a movie. And some of those like aesthetic choices like really work well, because like I'd like the director to sort of be like, I want it to be really intense, but at the end of the day, I also want you to remember this is a movie. And when you leave the theater or when you're done watching the movie, it's okay. It's like a release. Yeah. And I kind of like that, because especially the way the movie ends.
Yep.
And I don't think there's anything given away by seeing how it ends, but that particular shot choice at the end, which feels very dreamy and feels very like I think I can already hear people saying like, what the fuck? That doesn't, that ruins the movie. It made the movie for me.
I loved how it ended.
Yes.
And it's funny because I don't know.
Very last scene we're talking about.
Yeah, towards the end. But I think maybe, it's hard to say what the director had in intent as far as shooting it that way. But I almost feel it's just as much for the audience as it was for the character, to show that like it was almost like an escapist thing for them whenever it had those sequences. Like whether for better or for worse, this is where their mind goes when certain things get triggered, or certain things get happens to them, or because of something that they did. Like even like the roid rage scenes, like I feel like a lot of those kinds of scenes is where like how Jackie feels more than anything else. Yep. So a lot of those scenes like really kind of reflect the inner turmoil that these characters are having. And I think it's such a great way to relate to the audience also, because it's like, look at all this shit we're gonna put these characters through, but in their mind it looks like this, so they're fine.
Yeah. Yep. And oh man, yeah. This was such a good movie.
It's really great. And and I know it's funny. This may be like a weird random segue, but I know we in this household watch a lot of Tarantino movies. It's very ultraviolet, but also hyper masculine. And I know like Kill Bill is kind of the exception to that, because obviously with the bride. But there's still a sense that even those movies feel, at least to me, like kind of masculine, in the fact that like those characters could have been men and it would have been the same story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Other than, obviously the bride having a baby and wanting out of that life because of that.
Right.
But that you could say that for like the John Wick that falls in love and wants out of that life. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think in that sense, it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition, the female director and the male character, how they treat like a violent movie. I think it's such an interesting contrast, because like I feel like for Tarantino, for better or for worse, it is like obviously like his whole deal is like ultra violent and very much like in your face and aggressive. And not to say that this wasn't, because there was very like shocking moments in it that we were both like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But I feel like it almost like that wasn't the point. Like those moments were more like, okay, like we're gonna put these characters in this position and we're gonna see how they react to it.
Right.
It wasn't really like the end game for this movie to be like the next Tarantino movie, like look alike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I think in that when you think about it in parallel, like Tarantino movies to this, like they're kind of mirror, because it's ultra violent, like crime, whatever, like shootouts and beatings and whatever. But it's like I feel like the vibe is so different because of like the male and the female perspective. And I think that's why I love this movie so much, because I've seen so much Tarantino and those kinds of perspectives. and you never see it like this.
Right.
And it's so, I don't know, it just so
It's an
almost
yeah.
edifying feeling to be like, look at all the female characters that we can jam into movies and it'll still be great. So where have they been this whole time? Or female directors or female like writers or whatever. And like look how awesome it is without taking away from the story. And like queer characters even. Like look at all this awesome shit that we can cram into a movie and it didn't take a single thing away from it. And I think that's what is so exciting about a movie like this when we've watched so much other like hyper brutal, hyper violent, like neo-noir or like action movies. And it's all like, there's, obviously we're huge fans of action movies. We watch all the John Wicks. We're even fans of like the old school Hong Kong stuff. And those are all great in their own right. But you know how excited we get when we see like the old school, like Michelle Yeoh, like, because you never see that. They're never really given much of a chance. And when they are, they have to be like, oh, the one of them is fine. That's enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's this countless extended genre of action. Anyway, this is going to be just my diatribe now, but
No.
saying like this movie, it doesn't have to be like, oh, this should be like the, what is it? Like the representation for all like female-led action violent movies. But it shouldn't have to be that. But it's so exciting that we have something like that. And not just because it's an action movie or a neo-noir or like violent, but it just the perspective shift of like, how does a female director direct something like this? Because we even talk about, I'm going on like a whole diatribe now, but like we think about some of the best action movies that we love in this house. One of the biggest ones, Point Break, directed by who? Catherine Bigelow. Right. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to me, just the wealth and depth of talent that isn't tapped into because like female creators aren't given enough of a chance. Right. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, no. I think
just ranting and raving.
I think it's a great point, and it's something that hopefully going forward, like we will see more of that, or hopefully like A24 and Neon or Blumhouse or whoever will continue to carry like the flag, like in what's the Civil War movie Glory, where like the guy gets shot and he's like, you have to carry the flag. You got to carry that flag. Like it feels like for a period there, we really lost that. But I it almost makes me want to go back to the huge Marvel era and us research, like, what did we miss during the Marvel era? Right. Because there may have been some gems in there, but like the flag wasn't like being carried like enough, or we just didn't see it.
Or there wasn't enough. I don't know.
It could just be because Marvel movies right now have taken such a huge step back and they've kind of gotten out of the way of cinema and cinema is in a place where like they need the help, that like they're willing to take whatever. And it's like, well, maybe we should have been doing some of this stuff the whole time.
Right.
And again, not to get big into the dynamics of like how much money this movie made or whatever, but like good product is good product. And let's just put it out there, and your point about like, it's interesting because like if you were on a marketing team, you could say you would probably sort of steal what you just sort of said to say like, it's like a Quentin Tarantino take on this and that.
Right.
Granted, it may like skew that because people would be like, oh, I was expecting more like witty dialogue or this or that. But it's more about like the story, right? And like we watched Jackie Brown and you really like that. Now, granted, that was an adaptation from a book and not like an original story, but it kind of goes to say, how you deliver that end result, right? And I think you can get those types of movies like this one, and we need to get those opportunities to like women, or really anybody, but like probably more so women, because like you said, the perspective, the angle, like of a lot of that stuff, just I agree with you. Like I don't even know how to I don't know how to like really like put an analogy to that, because you are right. Let's care about the craft. And I feel like kind of like what you're saying is like a female in director in this movie is like, let's really think about the craft and the story that needs to happen here. At least, we're making assumptions that that's how she wanted to do it. even if she didn't want to do it, that's how she delivered it. That's how we are like consuming it,
Yeah.
where it feels like it's a very, like we were saying earlier, it's a very well prepared meal, but yet it's like one of those meals where you're like, man, I'm getting hit with this flavor and this flavor, and I didn't expect this and I didn't expect that. I actually looked at this and didn't really expect it to work.
Right. And
this is like one of my favorite things I've ever eaten,
you know?
And you may not always come back to it because it's so different than what we're kind of used to having shoved in front of us, that it's sort of like, I'm hoping that we will remember to come back to these meals and be like, we need that, like we need more of that, because we remember having it and it was really good and tasty. And I'd rather maybe have that than, may take a little longer to prepare than a quick, drive-through burger or a quick, takeout Chinese or whatever. But like, sometimes you have to be like, you know what, it'll be worth the wait. So like, let's do it. Like, let's go back to this meal. That all to say, what would we, how are we going to prepare? Okay. So how are we going to pick a meal for this movie? We actually had, we had a suggestion. I'm sure she would not mind if we were to give her a shout out. But we got a suggestion from our good friend Sarah. Do you want to say hi to Sarah?
Hey, Sarah.
And because she had already seen this movie, she loved this movie.
We were actually wanting to go watch it with her at the Texas Theater, which kind of never.
Too many things.
The timing got weird.
So I had a lot of stuff.
So she ended up watching it way before we did.
Yeah. And we were
and
telling
she did
her,
like it, right? When you were talking.
Yeah. No, she very much liked it. And so we asked her, if you had to pick something to pair with this movie to sort of either describe the movie or sort of like what your feeling was after seeing this movie, of like, it's kind of like this and it's kind of that, because it's just how it is. She suggested 4 things, and we ate some of these things, but we didn't eat all of them. But I also had some other suggestions that could go with this, based after now seeing the movie, but also kind of based on her suggestions. So she suggested Sloppy Joe's.
Okay.
She suggested very saucy buffalo wings.
Okay.
A Diet Coke.
I love how specific.
Yeah, it's very specific.
It has to be Diet Coke.
And a chocolate
lava cake.
Chocolate lava cake. I will start from the bottom. I'm not sure how the lava cake ties into all of this.
So the only thing I can think of, other than just straight vibes, how she would feel, but the only thing I can think of for the lava cake, it's very much like kind of an 80s or 90s kind of flashy dessert. Which is why kind of in the more modern times, it's like not really made anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a little outdated, and it's very much kind of the country club favorite, if that makes sense. Of like
a fanny pack.
Yeah, well, fanny packs are back in style now, so so maybe lava cake will have its return too.
Sure.
But no, like when you as somebody that's in hospitality, that's been in kitchens, there's not. I don't know that I can think of a lot of pastry chefs that will be like, oh, you know what, we should put on the menu, a chocolate lava cake.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Right.
Maybe like a fancy, like tiny version, new take on it, but not as it was back in the 90s, when it was just like a cake with the ganache inside.
Yep.
But yeah, that's maybe the reason why she would pick that. It was very much of its time.
I could see that. Like, it wants to be classy, but it's not classy. Like,
at least not anymore.
Yeah.
I think back in the day, it really was like kind of the finer, fine dining.
Yeah, but in reality, it wasn't even back then.
No, not really. I mean, it's cake with ganache inside.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, ooh, that's fancy. And it's. I
mean, it's tasty, and we had some, and it was good.
Yeah. So, and so when it comes to the Sloppy Joes and the saucy buffalo wings, her words, not mine. She said because lesbians are sloppy.
Oh my god.
And
Oh
so
my God,
that's why
Sarah.
those she had those choices.
She's lesbian, by the way. She can say
Yeah,
that.
she can say that. It's fine.
We're not-
Yeah.
As the token straights, we do not claim that.
Right. But thanks, Sarah. But to that point, there's something about those meals in this movie, like this movie is messy.
Okay.
But at the same time, like a damn good sloppy Joe, like you will scarf that sloppy Joe. Like
I would stop there, sweetie. I don't know.
no, I'm just
keep going.
all I'm saying is, like, much like this movie, I was just like, man, I want to know where this is going. And like,
well, I guess in the most PG way possible, it's like, it's like a homemade. It's funny because we were trying to think, like, do restaurants, like, because we were lazy to make our own meal tonight.
right.
But
we did have wings tonight.
We did have wings takeout.
Nice. Actually, it was a new place
really
in
good.
town. Really good. Very sloppy. Like they were slopped in juice.
It's delicious.
It was delicious though. And their fries were on point.
On point.
Yep.
Crinkle cut. Anyway.
Yep. Can't go wrong with the crinkle.
Yeah, I guess I can see it as, like, how they were living. They were not very fancy people, obviously, and they were cooking a lot for themselves and for each other. And, Sloppy Joe, we were trying to think, like, is there a restaurant even around that would have Sloppy Joe? Like, nobody sells that. There was a little bar restaurant I used to work at that we did have a special home, like, completely made from scratch Sloppy Joe. Is delicious. We tried to make some at home, and Eli was like, absolutely not. It has to come out of a can. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah, that's the way
well,
it
fair
goes.
enough.
Yep.
But yeah, there's not any place I can think of off the top of my head that would serve Sloppy Joe.
But if somebody had a good sloppy Joe, I would probably
let us know.
Yeah.
Shout it out.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Like I actually, obviously we enjoyed her suggestions because we ate everything.
Yeah, it fit. It fit also with sort of the trashiness of the movie of like the gym not looking super sexy. I mean, it looked nasty.
Or
gross.
like at the end of the night shift, you're just kind of grabbing for whatever's in the fridge.
The apartment wasn't like trashed, but it also wasn't.
It wasn't great.
Wasn't well kept.
It was definitely a little rundown.
Yeah,
maybe in the not the best part of town.
So I could see like somebody eating wings or wanting wings in a place like that, and then you're kind of wiping your hands maybe on the couch a little occasionally and not telling anybody, but then the cat will come and clean it up or whatever. like not super gross, but just enough where it's the
cat was very helpful.
Nobody would notice. So I put it here on the side of the couch and you're like, don't do that.
Come on.
Don't do that.
No, but yeah, I can definitely, I can see all those suggestions working. Obviously they did because we ate it.
Yeah. Well, I had one other that I was going to throw in case you had one that you want to throw in also, but this kind of had me thinking of, I guess, in the same realm of Sloppy Joe, but whenever I was in grade school, they would make I guess I forgot so it was like a chili mac is what they would call it. And so it wasn't like it wasn't chili like the same way you would have like a Frito pie.
Okay.
It's more like Frito pie, I think, is like very thick sauce.
Yeah, it's chunky.
Chunky because you put it in with the chips, right? So chili mac, when it was served to us in grade school, and this would have been in the 80s, actually, now that I think about it, it usually was either spaghetti or it was like elbow macaroni. And then it was mixed in with like meat, but a little bit thick, like a thick meat, but not too thick, like not thick, like a chili, like.
Oh, okay. So still saucy.
It's still saucy. And
not like a stew, like a chili, but
no. And it wasn't like,
like a meat sauce.
Well, like a meat sauce, but like not heavy on tomatoes. It's really hard to describe. And if you were a kid of the 80s, and I'm sure my brothers probably remember this, they would remember the days where we would have, it almost seemed like it was the days that the lunchroom was just like, you know what, we just got to get rid of, we just got to throw something together. Fridge. So we're going to slap this together. But I mean, it was always intentional. And so like you would look at it going like, oh, it's spaghetti with meat sauce. And then you would eat it and you're like, this is not spaghetti and meat sauce. Like this is something else.
Okay.
Because the flavor of the meat.
Taste like chili?
Well, that's the thing. It kind of tastes like chili, but like if you think about it, like not often do you eat chili just with a
Oh,
spoon straight up, right?
sure.
It didn't have beans.
Okay.
So it
Thank
wasn't,
God.
yeah, it wasn't like a,
'Cause that would have been weird.
yeah, it's really hard to describe. I'll have to look this up to see if it's actually a thing. But when chili mac was done right in grade school, especially when you're drinking it with a carton of milk,
Ew.
it
It just sounds.
yeah,
It sounds so bad.
yeah, there was something very satisfying about chili mac.
Was there cheese on it?
Sometimes there'd be a little bit of cheese, like a little bit of cheese on top,
Like parm?
no, just like shredded cheese. No, I mean, this is South Texas. Like, we do not have fancy like Parmesan cheese. Like, it was just like some sort
Like
of shredded cheddar
Oh.
on top. And like I said, it wasn't like there was a hint of tomatoes, but not not heavy tomato sauce. And it
just a
definitely was
memory.
not like a meat sauce. It was not like a like a what do you say a carbonara sauce?
Oh no, carbonara is white.
Okay,
like
not carbonara.
like a bolognese.
Like a bolognese, yeah. It was not at all anything like that.
Definitely not that.
Nope.
Oh,
Nope.
interesting. So
Yep.
the spices were different.
The spices were very different. Like I said,
Interesting.
chili mac, it's very specific. And sometimes I want to say they would occasionally make it with beans, but very, very
With the
rarely.
Pot to serve with the pasta.
Yes, like an
Oh,
elbow
man.
pasta generally,
That's a lot.
like a macaroni, you know.
Yeah. That's weird.
But yeah, but it was like I said, very comforting, like very good if they made it right.
Yeah.
Some days
Can see that.
if you were at the end of the lunch line, it'd be very like soggy and gross, and it was like. Ugh.
No,
But if you were in the front of the lunch line,
it's still fresh.
Yeah, you're getting the good stuff off the top of the
pasta
pan.
hasn't fallen apart yet.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you were doing good in school and you were able to take care of your tests or your exams and you were able to get out of
Oh,
get in
man.
lunch line
It was
first.
a good day.
It was a very good day. Never went down great with milk, but
Oh.
we did not have a choice growing up. It was
Gross.
milk or skim milk.
Really?
Yes, those are your
Ooh.
choices. Whole milk or skim milk.
Man, I feel for my lactose intolerant brothers and sisters.
Yeah. But that's what this movie makes me think of. It's chili mac.
It's so specific.
Yeah, it's very, very specific. But like a good chili mac though. I'll see if I can figure out how to make that sometime.
Yeah, you have to let me know.
Yeah. But do you have any other something you would tie into it?
There wasn't anything in particular that kind of stood out to me. There was a scene where she feeds her cat a can of tuna. And it just kind of it just kind of made me think. And then they had that scene in the diner eating pancakes and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, that's right. There was a pancake scene.
Mm-hmm. But just them being a diner and thinking about the tuna and thinking about how like healthy their lifestyle probably had to be to look that way. As far as just trying to be ripped and super healthy, I was thinking like, although this is probably not the healthiest thing, but like something like a tuna melt is a very diner kind of thing to. Yeah, no, I know you're not a fan, and it's funny. I've never actually had a tuna melt. I've always been curious though about it. It just sounded weird because that like the whole concept of like tuna in a sandwich sounds fine, but then you add the slice of cheese on it is where it kind of loses me. So I've never been brave enough to try it. But whenever
But it's kind of like the bread is usually buttered and probably like put on a griddle, right?
I
or
don't know.
something?
I don't know. I've never had it. I've always been curious, but I've never been brave enough to order it. Every time I see it on a diner menu, I'm like, it's today the day, and it never is.
Well, but that's an interesting choice for this movie because, like, you know what, I can
Because that also feels very like diner kind
like you
of
sit
run
down.
down.
You sit down. And you're like, I'll take a tuna melt.
You know what sound? Yeah, it feels very.
Or what's a special?
Right, or like it feels like
tuna melt?
probably very comforting to certain people.
Yeah.
Because that's that's what they had for lunch or whatever.
Yep. I can see that.
But yeah, maybe next time we find ourselves at a diner, I'll actually end up trying it. I've always
I'll
been
try
curious.
some of your tuna melt and see if it ties in with weightlifting and.
I just saw the face you made. I don't think you're gonna do.
Well. So is this I think I already know the answer, but is this a chef special movie?
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
I'd be. I mean, we've seen a lot of good movies the past year. So I don't know if and it's only July, so I don't want to. I want to hold off and say what my favorite so far is, but this is very high up there.
Yeah,
have
I
to
would
say.
agree. This movie is this is a chef special in the way that I was not expecting.
Right.
Having a friend saying like, "Hey, I know a place. Let's go grab something from there."
It's a hole in the wall.
Yeah, it's a hole in the wall, but
it's a good neighborhood
joint.
It's
you'll like it. It's just
like
don't make an impression from the outside.
Yeah, don't worry about the
aesthetic.
Don't worry about the crabby waitress.
Or really just wait until you eat. And then like it felt like that with this movie. Like when it was over, it's like, man, that
fucking great.
I need more of that.
I want to come back every week.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad that we both liked this movie, and I'm glad we had saucy wings tonight.
It was really good.
Yep.
I hope you don't get heartburn from that tonight. It was pretty spicy.
I don't think it was spicy. For me, it was not spicy, but it was delicious. So
the frozen lava cakes that we got was pretty good too. I swear, I used to be a chef. I probably could have made all of that tonight, but I was not.
No, we were.
We had we had to put together a grill, so I wasn't trying to do too much.
Yep. Well, all right. I guess we will chalk that one up on the menu board, and let's see. Let's get to it. Let's maybe late night workout. Do you want to?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Well, all right. I guess we will do a little bit of stretching and some workout before we go to bed, and
probably some stretching for sure.
Yep. And then I guess we'll just see what comes across our plate next movie. So, alrighty.
Are we supposed to do a sign off? Bone apple tea.
I guess we don't. Is that what you want to say?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Anyway, happy eating.
I don't know.
Why haven't we thought of one by now?
I don't know.
I think we should have one already.
Maybe if we have enough episodes out by now, like if anybody has any suggestions, how should we sign off?
It has to be about movies and food.
It could be. What do you call it when they say, "Give the chef my regards." So we give you our regards to sign off.
That's good.
I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway.
Alrighty.
All right. Love you.
Love you too.